The controller vibrated in Marcus's hands as his character dodged another attack on screen. Tuesday evenings had become his sacred gaming time, a ritual he'd maintained for 3 years since moving into his downtown apartment. The space wasn't large, but it was perfectly his. Every shelf held exactly what he needed. Every corner reflected his personality. And most importantly, everything stayed exactly where he left it. "My lease is up next month," Emma said from the kitchen table, her voice carrying that casual tone that Marcus had learned meant something important was coming. She didn't look up from her laptop, fingers still dancing across the keyboard as she worked on another design project. The blue glow from her screen illuminated her face in the dim apartment, creating shadows that danced across the wall behind her. Marcus paused his game mid-battle, something he never did. His character died instantly, but he barely noticed. There was something in Emma's tone that made his stomach flutter with nervous energy. They'd been dating for 10 months now, and she'd been spending more and more time at his place. Her toothbrush lived in his bathroom. Her favorite mug had claimed permanent residence in his cupboard. Her lavender shampoo had somehow become the dominant scent in his shower. "Oh," Marcus managed, setting the controller down carefully on the coffee table. His mind raced through possibilities. Would she move across town? Find a cheaper place? Go back with her parents? The thought of her being farther away made his chest tighten uncomfortably. Emma finally looked up, pushing her glasses up her nose in that adorable way she did when she was nervous. "I was thinking," she said, her brown eyes meeting his, "maybe I don't need to find another place." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge and an invitation rolled into one. Marcus felt his heart skip, then race, then skip again. Moving in together. She was suggesting they move in together. This was huge. This was the kind of decision that changed everything about a relationship. No more having separate spaces to retreat to after arguments. No more choosing when to see each other. No more privacy for his weird midnight snack habits or his tendency to talk to himself while coding. The silence stretched on. And Marcus could see Emma starting to fidget with her pen, a sure sign she was second-guessing herself. Her confidence was cracking, and he could practically see her preparing to take it back, to laugh it off as a joke. "You want to move in here?" Marcus asked, his voice coming out more uncertain than he intended. He gestured vaguely at his small apartment, suddenly, seeing it through her eyes, the gaming setup that dominated half the living room, the stack of programming books that served as an impromptu side table, the kitchen that contained exactly 3 types of cereal and not much else. "Only if you want me to," Emma said quickly, her words tumbling over each other. "I mean, we've been together for almost a year now. I'm here every weekend anyway. Half my clothes are in your closet and you already gave me a key 3 months ago." She laughed, but it was nervous, uncertain. "What if it's too soon? Or if you need your space? I totally understand. I know how much you value your independence." Marcus looked around his apartment again, trying to imagine it filled with Emma's presence permanently. Her art supplies spreading across his organized surfaces, her collection of houseplants, turning his minimalist space into a greenhouse, her habit of leaving half-finished cups of tea in every room. It should have terrified him, but his logical brain was already cataloging all the ways this could go wrong. But then he remembered last Sunday morning. She'd woken up before him and made pancakes from scratch, filling his usually sterile kitchen with the smell of vanilla and cinnamon. She'd brought him coffee in bed, knowing exactly how he liked it without having to ask. They'd spent the entire day doing absolutely nothing productive, just existing in the same space, comfortable in each other's silence. "Can I think about it?" Marcus asked, immediately seeing the disappointment flash across Emma's face before she covered it with understanding. "Of course," she said, forcing a smile. "It's a big decision. Take all the time you need." That night, after Emma went back to her current apartment, Marcus lay in his perfectly arranged bed, staring at the ceiling he'd painted exactly the shade of gray he wanted. His mind wouldn't stop spinning. Every logical part of him screamed that this was too risky. He'd worked hard to create his perfect sanctuary, had his routines, his systems, his carefully calibrated life, but his heart whispered different truths. It reminded him how empty the apartment felt when Emma left. How he'd started timing his grocery runs to match hers just to spend an extra hour together. How her laugh had become his favorite sound, even when it interrupted his concentration. 3 days later, Marcus made his decision. The moving truck pulled away from the curb on a sunny Saturday morning, leaving Marcus and Emma standing in his apartment, surrounded by boxers. Their apartment now, Marcus corrected himself mentally. The space already looked different, filled with possibilities and the faint scent of the jasmine candles Emma loved. The first week felt like living inside a romantic movie. Every mundane activity became an adventure when done together. Cooking dinner transformed into a dance around the small kitchen, each learning to anticipate the other's movements. Emma's colorful throw pillows brightened his gray couch. Her collection of succulents lined the windowsill, bringing life to spaces Marcus hadn't even noticed were empty. The bathroom counter, once home to just his electric toothbrush and basic toiletries, now hosted an array of mysterious bottles and containers that Emma assured him were all absolutely essential. Marcus discovered he actually enjoyed some of the changes. Emma's essential oil diffuser made the apartment smell like a forest after rain instead of the nothing smell he'd grown accustomed to. Her habit of playing soft jazz while cooking created an atmosphere he hadn't known he was missing. Even her collection of quirky coffee mugs, each with its own personality and story, made his morning routine feel less mechanical. But as the second week began, reality started seeping through the honeymoon phase like water through a crack in the foundation. It started on a Tuesday night. Marcus followed his usual routine, brushing his teeth at 10:15, checking his phone for exactly 10 minutes. Then lights out by 10:30. He needed his 8 hours to function properly at work, especially with the new project his team had just started. Emma kissed him goodnight, promising she'd be in bed soon. She just needed to finish one small section of a logo design for a client. At midnight, Marcus woke to the sound of clicking, not loud but persistent, like a woodpecker working on a particularly stubborn tree. Through the bedroom doorway, he could see Emma hunched over her laptop at the dining table, completely absorbed in her work. The screen's blue glow painted the living room in an ethereal light, casting long shadows that danced. With each movement she made, Marcus whispered, stumbling out of the bedroom, his eyes squinting against the brightness. Coming to bed? Emma looked up, startled, as if she'd forgotten he existed. Oh, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how late it was. This design just isn't working the way I imagined, and I need to fix it before the client meeting tomorrow. Just give me 30 more minutes. 30 minutes became 2 hours. The clicking continued, now accompanied by the occasional frustrated sigh or triumphant yes. When something worked, Marcus tried everything to fall back asleep. He counted sheep, practiced deep breathing, even tried that meditation app his coworker had recommended. Nothing worked. Every time he started to drift off, another sound would pull him back to consciousness. When Emma finally slipped into bed, at 2:30 a.m., whispering apologies and explanations about artistic inspiration not following a schedule, Marcus managed only a grunt in response. His alarm would go off in 4.5 hours, and he already knew tomorrow would be brutal. The pattern repeated the next night and the next. Emma would start working after dinner, intending to spend just an hour on her freelance projects. But 1 hour would become 2, then 3. Then suddenly it was the middle of the night, and Marcus was lying in bed, wide awake, listening to the symphony of creativity happening in the next room. It wasn't just the noise, Marcus discovered. It was the light. Emma needed proper lighting to see colors accurately on her screen, which meant the living room stayed bright enough to perform surgery. Their open-plan apartment offered no escape from the illumination. Even with the bedroom door closed, light crept in through the gap at the bottom, creating a thin line of brightness that his tired eyes couldn't ignore. By Friday, Marcus was running on fumes. He'd made 3 mistakes in his code review that morning, errors he would have caught icily. On a full night's sleep, his project manager had asked if everything was okay, noting that Marcus seemed distracted. His usual lunch group had commented on the dark circles under his eyes, joking about the honeymoon phase keeping him up at night. If only they knew it was graphic design, not romance, stealing his sleep. The weekend brought temporary relief. Without work the next morning, Marcus could sleep in, while Emma continued her nocturnal, creative sessions. But he knew this wasn't sustainable. They needed to talk about it to find some kind of solution. Yet every time he thought about bringing it up, he'd see how happy and fulfilled Emma looked when working on her art. And the words would die in his throat. She was living her dream, building her freelance business alongside her day job. How could he ask her to give that up just because he needed his beauty sleep? 3 weeks into their new living arrangement, Marcus felt like a different person, and not in a good way. The sleep deprivation had become a constant companion, a fog that followed him through each day. He'd started drinking 4 cups of coffee before noon, just to maintain basic functionality. His usual sharp focus had dulled to the point where simple tasks required tremendous effort. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Marcus stood in the conference room, a laptop connected to the projector, about to present the new software architecture he'd been developing for weeks. This was his moment to shine, to show the senior management team why they'd promoted him last year. The room filled with executives, including the CEO who'd flown in specifically for this presentation. He clicked to the first slide, opened his mouth, and his mind went completely blank. The words he'd practiced dozens of times vanished like smoke, stood there, staring at his own slides as if seeing them for the first time. The room grew uncomfortable, executives shifting in their seats, his manager giving him concerned looks. "Apologize," Marcus stammered, clicking to the next slide, hoping it would trigger his memory. But the technical diagrams might as well have been hieroglyphics. His sleep-deprived brain couldn't connect the visual elements to the concepts he knew so well. Somehow, stumbled through the presentation, missing key points, fumbling explanations, and watching his carefully crafted demonstration fall apart. The polite applause at the end felt like sympathy rather than appreciation. His manager pulled him aside afterward, suggesting he'd take the rest of the day off, maybe see a doctor if he wasn't feeling well. Marcus drove home in silence, anger and frustration building with each mile. This wasn't just about losing sleep. Anymore, it was affecting his career, his reputation, his entire life. He'd worked too hard to let it all crumble because his girlfriend couldn't work during normal hours like everyone else. He found Emma at home, having taken a half day to meet. With a potential client, she was sitting at the dining table, sketching ideas in her notebook, looking fresh and energized. The contrast between her bright enthusiasm and his exhausted frustration made something snap inside him. "We need to talk," Marcus said, his voice harder than intended. Emma looked up, immediately noticing his tone. "What's wrong? Did something happen at work?" "Yes, something happened. I just bombed the most important presentation of my career because I haven't slept properly in 3 weeks." The words came out in a rush, weeks of suppressed frustration finally finding voice. "Every single night, Emma. Every night you're up until 3 or 4 in the morning, clicking away at your computer, lights blazing. I'm lying there trying to sleep because I have to be functional at my actual job the next day." Emma's face went from concern to defensive. "My actual job? Are you saying my freelance work isn't real?" "That's not what I meant," Marcus said, but he was too tired to backpedal effectively. "I just mean that I have to be at the office at 9 every morning. I can't function on 4 hours of sleep like you apparently can." "I can't help when inspiration strikes," Emma shot back, standing up from the table. "This is how I work. This is how I've always worked. You knew I was a night owl when we started dating. Knowing it and living with it are completely different things." Marcus's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. "I've tried everything. Earplugs, white noise, sleeping on the couch. Nothing works because our apartment is basically a studio with a bedroom attached. There's nowhere to escape your midnight art sessions." Emma's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. "Escape? You want to escape from me? From the noise and the lights? Not from you," Marcus said, rubbing his tired eyes. "But maybe that's the same. I think at this point, maybe we're just too different. Maybe this was a mistake." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Emma's face crumbled, then hardened. "A mistake," she repeated quietly. "Moving in with me was a mistake?" Marcus wanted to take it back, but exhaustion had stripped away his filters. "I don't know, Emma. I really don't know. I can't keep living like this. Something has to change. You're right, Emma said, her voice cold now. Something does have to change. But did you ever think about talking to me about this before it reached this point? Did you ever consider that we could work together to find a solution? Just suffer in silence, building up resentment until you exploded. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She had a point. He'd mentioned it a few times in passing. But he'd never sat down and had a serious conversation about how much it was affecting him. Emma continued, tears starting to form in her eyes. This isn't just a hobby for me, Marcus. I have 3 regular clients now and 2 more interested. I'm building something real here, something that could eventually let me leave my day job and do what I love full time. But apparently that's not as important as your sleep schedule. That's not fair, Marcus protested weakly, isn't it? Emma grabbed her laptop and started packing it into her bag. I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight. We both need space. To think about what we really want from this relationship. The door closed behind her with a finality that echoed through the suddenly empty apartment. Marcus spent that night alone in his perfectly quiet apartment, and he couldn't sleep at all. The irony wasn't lost on him. After weeks of craving silence and darkness, he finally had both, but his mind wouldn't stop replaying the argument. Hurt expression haunted him more than any amount of clicking keyboards or bright lights ever could. The next morning, he called in sick to work, something he'd never done when he wasn't actually ill. He needed time to think, to figure out if this relationship was worth saving, and, if so, how to save it. He sat at the dining table, the same spot where Emma usually worked, and tried to see things from her perspective. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Can we talk? Really talk this time? They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown where they'd had their 3rd date. Emma looked tired too, dark circles under her eyes that matched his own. They sat across from each other, 2 cups of coffee between them like a peace offering. I'm sorry, they both said simultaneously, then laughed nervously. Emma reached across the table and took his hand. You're right that I got caught up in my own world and didn't think about how it was affecting. You and I should have communicated better instead of letting it build up, Marcus admitted. I was so worried about crushing your dreams that I ended up crushing us instead. They talked for 3 hours, really talked, laying everything on the table. Emma explained that her freelance work wasn't just about money or career ambitions. It was her creative outlet, the thing that made her feel alive and purposeful. The night hours were when her creativity peaked, when the world was quiet and her mind could fully focus. Marcus shared how the sleep deprivation was affecting not just his work, but his mental health. He wasn't trying to be controlling or dismissive of her dreams. He just needed to function, and that required consistent sleep. So what do we do? Emma asked. Because I don't want to lose you, but I also can't give up my work. Marcus had been thinking about this all morning. What if we compromise? Really compromise? Both of us making changes? They spent the next hour crafting a plan, both of them giving a little to gain a lot. Emma would work in the living room until midnight, then move to the bathroom if she needed to continue. It wasn't ideal, but with her laptop and a small folding table, she could make it work. The bathroom door would block most of the light and sound. Marcus would invest in better blackout curtains for the bedroom and a white noise machine specifically designed for sleep. He'd also try to adjust his sleep schedule slightly, going to bed at 11 instead of 10:30, giving Emma an extra half hour of prime working space. They also agreed on boundaries for special circumstances. If Marcus had an important presentation, or meeting Emma would wrap up work by 11 p.m. the night before. If Emma had a major deadline, Marcus would take a melatonin supplement and use his noise-canceling headphones. It's not perfect, Emma said, but maybe perfect isn't the goal. It's maybe workable is enough. The first week of their new arrangement was awkward. Emma felt cramped in the bathroom, constantly aware of trying not to make noise. Marcus still woke up sometimes, but less frequently. They were both trying so hard to make it work that the apartment felt tense, like they were walking on eggshells, but slowly they found their rhythm. Emma discovered that the bathroom's smaller space actually helped her focus. Without the temptation to get up and wander around, she worked more efficiently. She also started using the time constraint as a motivator. challenging herself to complete tasks before the midnight deadline. Marcus found that the extra half hour before bed gave him time to wind down properly instead of rushing from gaming straight to sleep. He started using that time to read or do some light stretching, which actually improved his sleep quality overall. 3 weeks into their new arrangement, something shifted. Emma finished a major project at 11:45 p.m., and, instead of pushing forward with the next task, she closed her laptop and joined Marcus in bed. "You're early," he said, surprised but pleased. "The bathroom deadline is actually helping me work more efficiently," she admitted. "I'm getting the same amount done in less time because I'm more focused." Marcus pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I've been sleeping better, too. That white noise machine is actually pretty amazing. I should have gotten one years ago." They lay there in the darkness, both awake but comfortable, and Marcus realized something important. This challenge hadn't broken them. It had forced them to communicate, to compromise, to consider each other's needs in a way they never had before. "Love you," he whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Emma whispered back, "even if you do snore sometimes." "I do not snore," Marcus protested. Double quotes, "Oh, you definitely do. But it's kind of cute, so I'll allow it." 6 months later, Marcus stood in their apartment, now truly their apartment, and marveled at how different it looked. Emma's artwork covered the walls, splashes of color against his previously bare surfaces. Her plants had multiplied, creating a jungle corner near the window. His gaming setup had been reorganized to make room for her drafting table. The space that had once been his perfect, solitary sanctuary had transformed into something else entirely, a home. The journey to this point hadn't been smooth. There had been other arguments, other moments of frustration when their different rhythms clashed. But they'd learned to navigate these conflicts with a grace that only came from practice and genuine care for each other. Marcus had discovered unexpected benefits to their arrangement. On nights when he couldn't sleep, instead of lying in bed frustrated, he'd join Emma in her bathroom office. She'd set up a surprisingly cozy workspace there, with fairy lights strung around the mirror and a small Bluetooth speaker that played lo-fi hip-hop beats at a volume only she could hear. He'd sit on the floor with his laptop coding while she designed, and these became some of his favorite moments together, working side by side in comfortable silence. Emma had made discoveries too. Marcus's structured approach to life, which she'd initially found restrictive, had actually helped her freelance business grow. His spreadsheets for tracking expenses and invoices had saved her during tax season. His suggestion to set regular working hours for client communications had prevented the career from taking over her entire life. The real transformation happened, gradually, so slowly, that neither of them noticed it happening until it was complete. Marcus started staying up later on weekends, joining Emma for what she called creative time. He'd work on his own coding projects while she painted or edited photos. He discovered that the late-night hours did have a special quality, sense of possibility that didn't exist during the harsh light of day. Emma, in turn, started appreciating mornings in a way she never had before. Waking up early with Marcus on weekends to go to the farmer's market or take a sunrise walk became a new ritual. She found that the morning light was perfect for certain types of photography work, and her portfolio expanded with a whole series of dawn-themed pieces. Their friends noticed the change when they came over for dinner parties. The apartment that had once been clearly Marcus's space, with Emma's things added, had become something entirely new. Neither of their individual styles dominated. Instead, they'd created something unique, a blend that was better than either could have achieved alone. "How do you guys make it work?" their friend Jessica asked one evening, admiring the organized chaos of their living space. "You're so different." Marcus and Emma exchanged a look, one of those wordless conversations that couples develop over time. "We learn to see our differences as features, not bugs," Marcus said, using programming terminology that made Emma roll her eyes affectionately. What he means, Emma translated, is that we stopped trying to change each other and started trying to understand each other. My night owl tendencies push him to be more flexible. His need for structure helps me be more productive. We balance each other. It wasn't always easy. were still nights when Emma's creativity kept her up until dawn, and Marcus would find her asleep at her desk in the bathroom, face smushed against her keyboard. There were mornings when his alarm woke her after only 3 hours of sleep. She'd grumble into her pillow about the unfairness of mornings existing at all. But they'd learn to navigate these moments with humor and grace. Marcus would gently guide a sleep-drunk Emma to bed when he found her at her desk. Emma would have coffee ready for Marcus on mornings when she knew he'd stayed up too late helping her with a project. The bathroom office had evolved into a proper workspace. Marcus had installed better lighting and a small ventilation fan to keep it comfortable during long work sessions. Emma had decorated it with inspiration boards and small plants that thrived in the humidity. What had started as a desperate compromise had become her favorite workspace, a tiny creative cave where she produced her best work. One night, as Marcus was falling asleep to the familiar sound of Emma's stylus on her tablet, muffled by the bathroom door and white noise machine, he realized something profound. The sounds that had once driven him to the edge of exhaustion had become the soundtrack of his life. He couldn't imagine falling asleep without them anymore. "Hey, Emma," he called out softly. "Yeah," came her voice from the bathroom. "Nothing. Just wanted to make sure you were there." He could hear her smile in her response. "Always, Marcus. Always." Looking back at their journey, Marcus understood that love wasn't about finding someone who fit perfectly into your life. It was about finding someone worth adjusting your life for. Emma hadn't just become his roommate. She'd become his partner, his balance, his home. The apartment might be smaller than ideal. Their schedules might be opposite. Their habits might clash. But they'd built something beautiful in the chaos. They'd learned that compromise wasn't about sacrifice. It was about creating space for both people to thrive. As sleep finally took him, Marcus smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, new moments of frustration and joy, but they'd face them together in their perfectly imperfect home. Two different people who'd learned to dance to the same rhythm, even if they heard different beats. The clicking of Emma's stylus continued into the night, a lullaby that promised she'd be there when he woke up, ready to face another day of their beautiful, chaotic life together.